Hi guys, Dark Aperture here. Today, I'm sort of coming up with a little idea how Apple could do the iPhone 5s. So, it's not a disappointment because Apple doesn't want a disappointment right now. They've gained a tiny bit of momentum with iOS 7. It is a pretty big improvement, but they're gonna need the hardware to back it to make a real case for buying their 5s over Galaxy S4 or HTC One especially, since the HTC One contains that aluminum build quality, which is starting to hurt Apple quite a bit. HTC did really good with that. Now, enough of this. I'm just gonna go over what they should use for many of these parts of this phone. So, first off, the processor. The processor in the previous iPhone, the iPhone 5, was an A6 clocked at 1 gigahertz. It was only a dual core, however, and there were quad core phones out at the time, so it wasn't very good. Wasn't very good, but there were definitely phones that were faster at the time that were cheaper. So for the processor, Apple really needs to step up their game. With an A7, with the A7, they should have a quad core that's clocked at 1.5 gigahertz. Now, now it's not all in the clock speed. It also has to have good architecture because it's gonna need to be able to beat the Snapdragon 800, which is the processor standard for many high-end phones later this year. And it also, like I said, should be a quad core since all phones are pretty much becoming quad cores at this point, and it really helps with multitasking. Now, what they need to do with the Geekbench score, which I'm just gonna miss one benchmark, command many other benchmarks too. The S4 is around the 3,200 area, if I'm not wrong. They should get the A7's Geekbench score to 4,300. Much bigger difference from the S3's 1,400 and the iPhone 5's 1,600. The S4 made a huge improvement over the 5, so Apple has to do the same in response and make it hard for them to do that again. So that's what they should use for the processor. And the lower clock speed so they can save battery life. Now for the display, it's pretty obvious they need to make it bigger, but pretty much wants you to hold all four corners of the display. So what Apple should do is make a 4.5-inch 1080p Retina Plus display. Sure, they made a tiny improvement by making the iPhone 5's display 4 inches, but that's a sub HD display, and it's still quite small. And many people can touch all four corners of a 4.5-inch display, Apple. So this would be good enough. Also, this would give you a huge advantage over your competitors in display quality since Retina's really nice, and Retina Plus would make it even better. And making a 1080p screen would lead you to have a better pixel density than any other phone from Samsung or HTC, because both those phones have larger screens and 1080p displays, which would mean the iPhone 5s has a better pixel density. And 4.5 inches, even Android fans have to know right now that's big enough. So they need to get quite a bit of a lead in display quality. Next up, for the cameras, since the 5's 8 megapixel camera actually can compete with the S4 in camera quality, even though there's a 5 megapixel gap, what if Apple took that 5S camera to 14 megapixels? We'll keep them whatever they had in that 5 camera. That would put Apple well in the lead for rear cameras. Then, since the HTC One's got one of the best front cameras right now, 2.1 megapixel front, they should do a 2.3 megapixel front to shut them up, and give both cameras 1080p recording to catch up with the times, because the iPhone 5 didn't have that for the front camera. So that will help Apple get a huge lead in cameras. You know right now it's going to happen if they do that. Even the ultra pixel, which in my comparison between the HTC One and Galaxy S4 seem to have a better camera, won't stand a chance. Now for the networks, not everyone can have 4G and 4G LTE. Some people are still stuck on 3G. So If the iPhone 5 doesn't support 3G already, sorry I don't follow iPhones religiously like some people do, but they should have that too, as well as 4G, 4G LTE, and all the wireless standards too, including 802.11 AC, so it can take advantage of those super fast speeds. That's also, if they're gonna, they should have the best radio, so they can get the most out of every network. And if they're gonna get the best radio, they also have to avoid the iPhone 4's you know what. Now, the iPhone 5 had 1 gig of RAM, which isn't a lot by today's standards. So, if iOS 7 has true multitasking, which I hope to God it does, come on Apple, get together. They should have 2.5 gigs of RAM, which would make the iPhone 5 a multitasking powerhouse. 5, did I say 5? I meant 5S. It would make it a multitasking powerhouse, a titan. Nothing people imagine multitasking until a few months when a phone with 3 gigs of RAM comes out. Also, I'm pretty sure the DDR3 RAM standard for phones is SDDR3, so make it that too, Apple, so the RAM's really fast. And because of this, multitasking will be noticeably better with the 5S versus, say, the HTC One or the S4 due to that extra 512 megs of RAM. Now, since due to these supercharged specs, the iPhone 5S will need a better battery. Because it's got more powerful hardware, the 1440 milliamp hour battery won't work anymore, so let's make a 2300 milliamp hour battery. Why not? Now, that's not a very accurate picture of what the 5S's battery will be, obviously. That'd be pretty dumb, but a new larger battery must be used to handle the requirements. If they do this, the 5S will show how they can get good battery life without sacrificing on power, which most phones would have to do to get that. If the A7 is really power efficient, this will help it out a lot. As in, if the battery can last 2 whole days, that would be pretty much ahead of everything. Now, for the design, you can make it thinner. You also have to make it wider and taller, obviously, but wider too, so people don't make memes about it, if you know what I mean. So, but there's a thing. It'll also have to be 20% heavier, which it'll probably be considering the increased surface area of the phone, of the larger screen. Sure, 20% heavier is a lot. It seems like a lot, but if you carried the 5 around with you before, you know you want that extra weight. You know you want it because it's just a little. The iPhone 5, guys, is just way too light. I've held an iPhone 5 before. Trust me. I'm not even that strong in terms of lifting. It doesn't feel like anything in my hand. Same goes for the iPod Touch 5th Gen. My friend has one. And I tested it out. So, that's what the size of the 5S should be. Plain and simple. We're gonna keep the aluminum body because that's one of the things that sells your iPhone, obviously. Now, for the OS, Apple needs to use iOS 7. That's pretty much explains itself. Now for the storage, it's to use 16, 32, 64, and 128 gig options. Also self-explanatory. To get ahead of the competition, Apple should have a really high-end 128 gig option for storage mode goes you want to buy everything in the App Store, which you still won't be able to do. And here's a comparison which I'll play for the rest of the video. Subscribe me, Dark Aperture, if you like this video too. Like, comment, in other words, like, comment, and subscribe. Now, this is basically a cheat sheet, Apple. So if you're watching this, you should just go with this. Listen to some consumer feedback first, though, and see how they think about it. Now, if the iPhone 5 does support 3G, then I'd be wrong here, and I'm embarrassed. But no big deal. Most of these specs would be on 5 would be pretty accurate. or accurate enough. Hmm.